Okay. I think y'all should be able to see me now. Yep, I see. Good afternoon, good afternoon. Hi, Cashel. Let me know if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Leslie, good afternoon. Gayatri, let me know if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. I apologize. I want to get it right. I don't know if y'all heard me, but this is my first live ever. So I'm trying to make sure, y'all can hear me. Let me know if you can hear me. Put a one in the comments. I can see myself, but I don't know if y'all can see me. So let me know. Just add a one in the comments. I see Simeon. Has this started? I can't see anyone at the moment. Can y'all see me now? I think I didn't add, I had to do something else. So let me know if you can hear me, press 1. If you can see me, press 2. If you can hear me and see me, then in the comments type 1 and 2. Lindsay, I see. Good morning. I'm on the West Coast. Thank you for joining. I know it's a little bit early for you. And I see you're a research coordinator. That's awesome. Let me see. I see 1, so y'all can hear me. What about 2s? Can y'all see me? Who else? Leslie, Grab, Ed Young. And if I'm mispronouncing your name, I apologize. Dubum, Ern, Betty, Jennifer, Christy, Ashot, Ketley, Marianne, Maureen. I see a lot of y'all. So thank you so much for joining me. I really, really appreciate everybody joining me wherever you are from. And this is something that, I see 1s and 2s. Okay, so perfect. Y'all can see me and y'all can hear me. So thank you for joining me, like I said. And I asked when I made this first post, like I think it was about 2 weeks ago, I asked for everybody to submit their questions in the comments so that you could go ahead and get in line. If you have not done so, you can submit your questions now. I don't know if we'll be able to have enough time to get to it today, but don't worry. I plan on doing this every Monday, so you'll get your chance for sure. But I do already have a list of questions. I see Sashmita, hi. I see you're a research associate from Texas. How are you? Thank you for joining. Simone, Jennifer, thanks everybody for joining. And so, yes, if you're just tuning in, please add your questions to the comments wherever you're joining us, whether it's from LinkedIn. That's my primary platform for those of you on YouTube and Facebook. Please come on over to LinkedIn and follow me, follow my companies, the Clinical Research Associate Solution, the CRA Solutions page, and you'll get a lot of great tips on a weekly basis. I've been kind of laying low, y'all, for a couple of months now, working on some things behind the scenes for y'all. But like I said, I'm back. Definitely plan on doing this every single week. So put your questions in the comments. I see somebody, Pearl, joining from South Africa. Thank you so much. And Deepa from India. Thank you so much. Everybody, please put in the comments where you're joining me from. I would love to hear where you're joining me from. And so, yes, let me go ahead and get started. So we're 4 minutes after 12 my time anyways. I'm on the East Coast, by the way. I'm located in North Carolina in the United States for those of you who are outside of the country. And Sylvia actually was the first person to submit her question. She was on it, y'all. She did it. I think like when I very first posted the meeting invite. So Sylvia, thank you so much for that. And her very first question is how for people looking to transition careers to CRA roles, how do they focus their resume and on what type of skills or qualifications? So that's a really good question, Sylvia. Thank you. I appreciate you for that. And I'm going to answer the second part first. So the question about what type of skills or qualifications that people looking to transition into the CRA role should focus on. Well, number one, I did a podcast episode about that because I know I get a lot of questions on that. So I wanted to make sure I covered it in detail. So if you are already a listener, then you should have heard it. It is episode 22. I talk about it a little bit in episode 18, but episode 22, I cover it in details. There's 10 specific skills categories that I recommend for people to get experience in if they're looking to transition into the CRA role. So I cover them in depth in that episode. And the podcast, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's called Confessions of a CRA. And you can find it. You can go to confessionsofacra.com, and you can also go and, to whatever your favorite podcasting platform is, Spotify, Apple, whatever that may be. And you can also listen directly there as well. But like I said, episode 22 covers that list in details. But just to give you an idea of the type of skills that I'm talking about. So typically they like to see that you have some type of TMF experience, and that's trial management file experience. For those of you who aren't familiar with the acronym, and ISF experience as well. That's investigator site file. So the TMF is actually internal, and that is what, there's the site level TMF, and then there's the study wide level TMF, and then it might be divided into countries as well, depending on if it's a global study or not. But they would like to see that you have experience, whether you're like a study coordinator and you're at the site. So if you have that ISF experience, or if you're at the CRO or sponsor level, let's say you're a CTA and you're responsible for filing in the TMF, let's say, for example, then that also counts as well. So any type of experience like that, those are great skills to have. If you have the chance to have any type of EDC experience, so let's say you're at the site level and you're a data entry coordinator, that's great experience to acquire. And I see all of you. Oh, Zaylee. Hey, Zaylee. I'm excited to see Zaylee. Zaylee's actually my video and LinkedIn and business. I mean, not LinkedIn, video, YouTube business coach. So I'm excited to see Zaylee. And Helen, I see you. I see a lot of other people as well. Thank you so much for joining me. Texas, Canada, South Africa, Chattanooga, Tennessee. Thank you so much, everyone. New Jersey, Mississippi, Jackson, Augusta, Georgia. Hey, Renee. I'm actually from Conyers, Georgia, so I know exactly where you are off of, Conyers is off of 20, Augusta goes straight down, right? Off of 20 as well. Durham, North Carolina. I see Charlene. You're close to me now. I live in Wake Forest now, so we're close. Gwinnett County. Ashley, like I said, I'm from Georgia. Hey, Ashley, Michaela, Raleigh, right down the street. It's a lot of y'all, right? But I want to welcome you. Thank you for joining. But I want to get to the questions because I know that's what y'all are here for. So back to Sylvia's question. So yes, there's a lot of different types of skills. And I've broken them down into 10. So I mentioned TMF, ISF, data entry. So if you have any EDC experience, perfect. And then also lab experience. So whether you are the person that's processing labs, collecting labs, shipping labs, all of those things count, right? As a CRA, you'll be required for managing that lab piece, making sure that if the labs, the collected labs are stored on site, you got to take a look at the storage documentation. You have to make sure that they were collected properly according to the lab manual per the protocol. There's a lot of different moving pieces. So if you have lab experience, for those of you who are, let's say, in phlebotomy and you're only processing the labs is a part of the study, don't worry, that's still important. And it still counts as a very, very good skill. And it will certainly help you as a CRA because you'll be very familiar with what you need to look for. So I always tell people, don't worry about what role you are currently in because they're all important and they can all prepare you, right? Regardless of the amount of preparation. Maybe you're thinking it's only a little bit or it's not enough, but trust me, it all adds up. It's all relevant and it's all important. So don't worry. What's another one? I always get this one, patient interaction. So if you're a study coordinator and you are actually conducting the subject visits, if you're actually consenting patients and you're responsible for conducting the consenting process, or let's say you're a part of, drafting the ICFs, the informed consent forms. All of that is relevant experience because as a CRA, you will be responsible for reviewing the consent forms and reviewing the consent process and making sure that everything was conducted appropriately per, ICHG GCP guidelines and all federal, local regulatory guidelines as well. And of course, study guidelines. So all this experience is relevant. They sponsor specifically the larger CROs. They like to see a lot of that patient to patient interaction. And I hear a lot of people say, well, why? Because as a CRA, typically speaking, you'll never speak directly with the patients, right? But they like to see this because if you've had that patient to patient interaction experience, then it in their mind anyways, it shows that you are then therefore ready to, be that CRA because you know what it looks like on the other side and you know what's going on when it comes to the study coordinator interacting with the patient and everything that's involved and all that's required when it comes to, conducting each visit for the studies and the consenting process and some of the hiccups that might come up. You know what's going on. So in their minds, in the recruiter's mind, the hiring manager's minds, this in essence makes you better prepared to be a successful CRA. So they like to see things like that. If you have any IP, that's investigational product, you might see it listed as IMP or investigational medicinal product. But if you have any drug product experience, that counts as well. So if you are a pharmacy tech, if you're in the pharmacy and you're like, oh, I only have experience on the pharmacy side, the investigational drug side of the clinical research space. That's great experience. Everything counts, y'all. Everything counts. And of course, the goal is to try to get as many of these different skills to gain as much experience as you can in each of these different categories. As you'll see, like I said, I broke them down into 10 in the podcast episode. You want to try to gain as much experience as possible, but every little thing counts. So don't feel like, oh, I only have this one area or that one area. That is fine. You get as much as you can. You work with what you have and you just use it to your advantage. You can still make it work. Trust me. And so, Sylvia, the other part of your question, how do they focus their resume? I also talk about this too as well. And so in the podcast, episode 18, I talk about how you can become a CRA with no monitoring experience or CRA certification. So I cover some of those things there as well again in episode 22. And then episode 24, where I talk about how to identify where you are in your CRA job search. I cover a little bit of that there as well. But just to specifically address your question, Sylvia, so how do you focus your resume? You always want to take a look at the job description. The job description is going to be your cheat sheet. It's going to be your best friend. It's going to give you all the answers that you need for all of these questions. So you take a look at that job description and you want to pull out the keywords. So how do you know what the keywords are? Whatever words seem to be listed the most frequently, those are obviously keywords. And then words that stand out that are tied into that top 10 category that I listed in the podcast, words that are affiliated with those 10 categories, that's another way to identify the keywords. So you want to take a look at that job description, pull out those keywords, and then compare it to your resume and, side by side and say, okay, how many of these keywords am I using throughout my resume? And if you aren't at that like 70% range, then that lets you know you need to increase more. And JobScan is actually a good platform that you can plug in the job description, you can plug in your resume, and it will literally spit out that percentage for you. So you don't even have to do that groundwork yourself. But you want to try to get at that 70% level. And if you aren't, just retweak it. No big deal. Rework it, tweak it, and start to try to incorporate those words, as many as you can, throughout your resume in a strategic way, right? Don't just plop them in there. We want to still add value. We still want to be able to quantify. We still want to show, the accomplishments, the achievements. You still want to have strategy. I'm not just saying throw the words in there, but to answer your question, Sylvia, that's how you focusing on your resume. And for those of you, like, it's, of course, it's only so much I can cover in these Q&A sessions, right? But for my one-on-one coaching clients, we go into this in depth. We work on this together side by side for every single position that they, apply to, or whether a recruiter or company reached out to them directly. We go through this together. And then so Sylvia, her next question is, if research experience is more than 10 years ago, how can those skills be referred to on the resume without looking outdated? So the easiest way is to include like a summary of qualifications, or career highlights is what I like to call it, at the very top section of your resume. So you can incorporate, the skills without, dating yourself, so to speak. So let's say if you had, 3 years of regulatory experience reconciling the TMF and the ISF, then you will be able to put that in bullet form in that section, but they won't necessarily know like what specific job is associated with, and then, the dates of those experience was. So that's a subtle way of being able to capture it. And then it'll also be, at the top of your resume. So that will draw them in as well, because it's like the first thing they'll see next to your name, because you want to include at the very top the contact information section. So your name, your current title, your location, your email address, your city, state that you currently live in, your phone number, and then your LinkedIn profile URL. I always say include that in the contact information section. And then next, you can put the summary of qualifications or career highlights. So that's a good way that you can incorporate it without, looking outdated, Sylvia. And I think you sent me some more questions, but I have, a few more ahead of you. So we'll see if we have enough time to get to those. If not, don't worry. Like I said, I'll be here every Monday. So next, Kanda. She sent me questions ahead of time as well. And her first question is, so what skills or college degree is needed to become a CRA? So the skills question, I covered that, like I said, in the podcast episode 22. So y'all, please take a look at that. You all seem like you have a lot of similarities when it comes to that question, like what skills should you be seeking? How do you know if you have enough? Take a look at podcast episode 22, and that is Confessions of a CRA. And then regarding your question, and then what college degree do you need to become a CRA? So surprisingly, y'all, there's no specific degree requirement other than they typically like to see a bachelor's level degree. Now, every time I say that, somebody's like, so, I don't need a science degree. I don't need some type of clinician degree, nursing, PA. I don't need a clinical research degree. No, technically you don't. You really don't. And there's also there was a time in the industry where you didn't even need a bachelor's level degree. And so there's a large group of people that are monitors who are actually, either have already retired or they're getting ready to transition and retire, who they may not even have a degree, but they've been monitoring for like 20 plus years. So we don't count those people. There may be people who were nurses, but they didn't necessarily get a bachelor's degree. So they got their RN, but they didn't get a bachelor's degree, and they transitioned into the CRA space. We're not talking about those people either. But if you're one of the people who, let's say, you don't have a degree at all yet, and you're trying to consider, okay, which degree would be the best for me, then of course, if you don't have anything and you're just starting from scratch, then it would be great if you could get a clinical research degree, bachelor's level. It would be great if you could get a science degree. But if you're one of those people who already has a degree, and let's say you got yours in English or history or music or art, any of those things, don't worry. You can still be a CRA as well. I have many colleagues, many friends, many people that I've worked with, and they do not have a, science, clinical research degree in any way, shape, or form. All of the areas that I just named to you, I've met people with art degrees that are monitors, people that have psychology degrees, writing, English writing degrees, history, music, literally anything you can think of, there is a CRA with that type of degree, and it's not science related, it's not research related, it's not medicine or clinically related. So if you already have a degree, don't worry. You can still become a CRA. I just always recommend that you target getting those skills in episode 22 that I listed, and focus on positions, roles, jobs that will help you get those skills, like the clinical research coordinator job. A lot of times you can find coordinator jobs, especially at local sites, private practices, that will allow you to become a study coordinator without having any industry experience, and they're willing to train you. Sometimes you can find them at the big institutions now, especially since we've had the pandemic episode. There's so many opportunities and so many job openings, at least here in the US. I will say, caveat, it varies from country to country. So some countries may not necessarily have as many, opportunities here in the US as we currently have. But I will say that because of the pandemic, that should also be increasing in changing in the near future as well, because research in general, y'all, is expanding globally. So if it's not really happening and it's not as, available in your country right now, don't worry, it is coming. Research is expanding, so you are getting a head start. But yes, so going back to the question, what is it? The degree. Yes. Going back to that question, you don't necessarily have to be so, and if you're one of those people that's like, well, I don't have a degree, but I don't really want to get a science degree, they're kind of more challenging. What about communications? If you want to get a communications degree, and that's fine too, you can still make it. But I always say, if you are starting from scratch, why not go ahead and prepare yourself in the best way possible to be successful in the role, right? Because there's a lot of acronyms, there's a lot of clinical terms, there's a lot of science involved that you will at some point have to learn and catch up on, whether you do it in an institution or you do it on your own time. So why not, right? And moving on to Candace's next question. So if you don't have a degree, is there any way to become a CRA with a training program? So I kind of touched on that a little bit, Canda, but just to kind of specifically answer that question, yes, there is a way. Are the chances very slim? Yes. And it keeps it, with time, it gets worse and worse. Well, I'm not going to use the word worse, but the opportunities, I'll say, for people that, don't have that bachelor's level degree that want to become a CRA, those chances are decreasing more and more each year. So is it possible? Yes. I met someone this year that actually got a role. She was a study coordinator for quite some time. So she did have a ton of clinical research experience. Let me make that clear. But she was able to land a CRA job without a bachelor's level degree. Now, the caveat with that, or the disclaimer, the warning that I always give people is that you might be able to land that, that first position, that one position, right? But in terms of, fast tracking your career and progressing your career, being able to navigate other companies and transition into other companies will be challenging, because although that one company might be willing to, make an exception in terms of truly leveraging your career and taking control of your career and making it into whatever you want, and to really, making your dream a reality, that's where the challenge comes in. But I always say it's okay, because if you do get that role, please consider, if you get the CRA role, you don't have a bachelor's level degree, that's fine, because you have time. It's challenging. I'm not going to lie. Being a CRA is enough in and of itself, right? So then for me to say, well, you can get a degree while you're a CRA, it's going to be challenging, but there's a lot of programs out there, y'all. If you do your homework, you do your research, where you can do it online, and they also have weekend options. They have part-time options. They really make it feasible for the working mom or the working dad, or, people that have maybe two jobs, because you have all these responsibilities, right? So take a look into that. Don't give up on yourself. Oops. I think there I go. So And then for your third question, Kendall, what would one expect day to day to look like as a CRA? So that's a loaded question. I don't know if we have enough time to cover that here today, but you know what? I will definitely add that on the podcast list. And I will make sure that I cover it in detail there for you guys. But just to kind of give you a window into the day to day. So I would say that you would divide it up into three categories. And one being what your day looks like when you're working at home, in your office. I'm at home in my home office right now. What that looks like, and then what it looks like when you're traveling on the road, whether that be to get to the site or to get to your hotel. And then another third window when you're actually on site and you're conducting site visits. And that will also look little bit different depending on whether it's a qualification visit, and initiation visit, an interim visit, or closeout visit. Those are the main four types of visits. And so in terms of if you're at home in your office, it depends on what you have to do. So if you're just coming back off of a trip, you might have trip reports. You will have trip reports to write if you're coming off of a trip. You have expense reports that you need to submit. You might have some emails that you need to catch up on. Maybe some of your other sites have some challenges, so you might need to make some calls with them and help support them on the study. You might need to do some retraining. There might be some filing that you need to do in the TMF, depending on how your organization is structured. If you collected documents while on the road, you might need to file those documents. It just depends on what happens while you were away, what you may or may not need to do while, once you get back home and you're working from your office. There might be meetings that you need to attend. There might be CRA meetings, study team meetings, company meetings. There's lots of meetings, right? Depending on what phase you are in your studies, you might be doing some weekly recruitment calls with your sites and checking in with them on recruitment, making sure they're on track. So that might be, some things. Maybe somebody had an SAE, and you need to follow up on that and make sure that they have all the supporting documentation that is required for the SAE. Maybe somebody has some IP issues. That happens a lot, where maybe the IVRS system that they're using dispensed the wrong kit. Maybe it dispensed a kit that is not on file. Who knows, right? There's so many different challenges, and no single day, I will say, will always, be duplicate another day. You're always constantly, even though you might be doing the same thing, it's always going to look like a completely different day. So if you're a person that likes the changing dynamics and the putting out fires, and you don't want to be doing the same thing every day, being a CRA is for you. And then if it's one of those travel days, it just depends on where you're going and what your home airport is. So if you're in Atlanta at Hartsfield and it's a hub airport and you have a lot of direct flights, then your trip might not be as bad. But for me, being in North Carolina right now, my home airport is RDU. It's not a hub airport, let me tell you. So most of the time, unless it's like, the major airports, I have to connect. And what could typically be like a 2-3 hour direct flight can easily turn into an 8-9 hour trip. Sometimes more than that. It just depends on where you're connecting at, how long the layover is. Has there been any delays? Has there been any cancellations? It just all depends. So sometimes, depending on where you're going, you can travel from home and then go directly to the site and be able to, make that straight, transition. Sometimes you need to travel the day before, and you'll be traveling directly to the hotel and going to the site the next day. So it just all depends. Sometimes you're going directly from the site back home. Sometimes, again, you're going from the site back to the hotel, and then the next day you're going back home. So there's those travel days, and that could vary greatly depending on the weather, depending on the flight mechanics. Sometimes, you have planes that have mechanical issues, and that causes delays. There's just a lot of different factors. And then there's that third category where, what your day would look like if you're actually conducting a visit. And there's, like I said, there's 4 main types of visits. So that will kind of look different as well, depending on the type of visit. Qualification visits, initiation visits, they'll look differently than, like, the interim visit, for example, where you're reviewing the data, you're reviewing new subjects, you're reviewing the lab shipments, the IP management, things that occurred since the last time you were on site for interim routine visits, right? But if it's an initiation visit, you're doing training, you're training the site on the protocol. If it's a qualification visit, you're trying to see if the site qualifies to even participate on this study. And when I say qualification, meaning, do they have the resources? Do they have the equipment, the machines, the staff, the space? Do they have everything that they need to actually conduct this study properly? And then if it's a closeout visit, you'll be shutting the site down. You'll make sure that they have everything in place so that they can properly end the study, archive it, and officially seal it, move on. So it just depends on what type of day it is, what you're doing that day. And, there's different factors for each, whether it's travel day, it's a home office day, or whether it's an on-site day. But those are the 3 main, categories of things that you will typically experience anyways as a monitor. So that's a high level, quick overview of, what it looks like, what you can expect on a day to day, Kanda. And then for your last question, what would be the next level up from a CRA? That was Candace's question. What would be the next level up from a CRA? So that's a loaded question too. So the very next level is, there's different levels within the CRA role itself. So you can have like that entry level CRA position, the CRA 1 position, and then there's like the more junior CRA 2 level position, and then there's the more senior level positions where some companies just specifically title them as senior CRA. Others might name it CRA 3. Others there's levels within the senior CRA role. So you might see senior CRA 1, senior CRA 2, and then some companies now have the principal CRA role, which is at that higher level. And then there's some companies that even have an executive CRA role. So there's levels throughout the CRA job role itself. And then also you have where you can be an independent 1099 CRA. Typically, they like to see the more experienced monitors, before you can necessarily qualify, or companies will be willing to hire you as like that truly independent 1099 contract CRA role. But then in terms of, I'm not sure, Kanda, if you mean like within the CRA space or beyond the CRA space, but just to cover beyond the CRA space, what's kind of the next level up, it's totally up to you. Some people say within the clinical operations, the clin ops department. So you can go into trial management, you can go into project management, you can go into line management, and where you're more so managing the CRAs and the people versus the study aspects. It's totally up to you. Some companies have a more site management specific role where you're kind of like the ambassador or the liaison for a particular site, or if you have like a group of sites like Florida Cancer Specialists, for example, you might be like the point of contact for the company for that umbrella of sites. And then some people, they completely transition into another department. Like they might go into medical affairs and take on a scientific role. They might go into drug safety and pharmacovigilance and take on a role there as well. So it kind of just depends on where you want to take your career. But truly, honestly, the sky's the limit in terms of, where you can take your career, where it can go. What you want to do next as a CRA. I always say that the CRA role, and not to say that it's the only role, I don't want to confuse anybody and make them think, if in order to, truly excel and make the most out of my career, I have to be a CRA. That's not true. You can definitely avoid being a regional CRA. You can avoid being an in-house CRA. And I know people that go from study coordinator or CTA directly into a project management or socio trial management role. So there are pathways and ways around it. But I always still say that the CRA role is truly like that gateway role into every other area of the industry, just because it prepares you for so much, because it's like that central intricate role where you're dealing with all different departments, all different vendors. You're dealing with the in-house team, the site team, you're dealing with the PIs, you're dealing with sometimes the key opinion leaders, the investigators, the sponsors. Like, there's so many different moving pieces, there's so many different departments, there's so many different roles and hats that the CRA has to take on, that it truly prepares you for like any department. So I always say it's like that gateway role. And like, once you become a CRA and you've had that successful CRA career, and it doesn't even have to be long for a long time, right? I know CRAs that were only monitoring for 2 years or even less. I've had podcast guests on. Listen to the podcast guest stories, the interviews, and that will really give you a window into all the different opportunities and roles that you can transition into from the CRA role. I have so many wonderful guests week to week, so definitely take a look at all the interviews. But the sky's the limit, Kanda, honestly, the sky's the limit. And for anyone else that is, that has these questions, the sky is truly the limit in terms of, where you can take your career. So I actually went a little bit over today. Time flies. I didn't get through as many questions as I thought I would. I will take one more. A question from Tania Raid. And so she said that she wants to know how to get started with CRA roles. What should she do? What should I do if I don't have prior monitoring experience, even though I've worked for the clinical research industry for a few years now? And that is Tania's role. So Tania's question. So Tania, I was in the same boat. I had clinical research experience. I was a CTA, a study coordinator, and in-house CRA. And I had the same question because people told me that, well, you need the coordinator experience, you need the CTA experience. And I still, y'all, could not land that first CRA role. I had a bachelor's in biology, I had a master's in pharmacology, and I was still struggling. And you can learn all about my journey in my podcast episodes as well. So that would be episode 16. But Tania and anybody else who has that question, if you look at episode 16, 18, 22, 24, pretty much all of the solo episodes, it addresses this specific question. I do a whole episode on episode 22 about how you can land your first role without monitoring experience, without a CRA certification. And I get a lot of people that's like, that's impossible, there's no way. Well, guess what? Every CRA that has ever been a CRA in the history of CRAs, like, they started without monitoring experience. You're not going to get monitoring experience until you get it, right? And typically, unless you have like some hookup or somebody that will allow you to shadow them or something like that, the only way you're going to get that monitoring experience is through your first job. So it's possible because we've all done it. It's the way the industry, operates, and you see these job descriptions and it says entry level, but then it says 2 years of monitoring experience, right? It throws you off and it makes you feel a little bit discouraged. It makes you feel hopeless. It honestly makes you want to give up, right? I was there. I felt the same way. And don't give up, y'all. Don't give up. My very first CRA position, it actually had 2 years of monitoring experience required on the job description. And guess what? I still got an offer. I still landed it. I still got my first CRA job. I've had a very great career, and you can do the same. So don't let that discourage you. So check out episode 22. And then, what else? And then let's see. So we're coming up on 40 minutes after. I do have more questions to go through, and I see some people have put some more questions here in the comments as well. So I'll add that to the list. And next week, I will continue with the list of questions I already have. I'll add the new questions. And please, y'all, get your questions in because it's a running list. And I want to answer everybody's questions. I really, really and truly do, because I was there. I was you. I know how challenging it is. There's not a one-stop shop where you can go and get all this information. Most of the information is contradictory, or it's discouraging, or it's just flat out confusing, right? So please send me your questions. You can put them in the comments section. You can DM me directly. And let me take a look at some of the comments that I've gotten so far. I see Jennifer, Alabama. General tips for traveling as a CRA, Krista. I see you. I got you next time. Non-traveling positions, somebody asked. Yes, there are CRA non-traveling positions. They're called in-house CRA positions or remote CRA positions. They also have entry-level in-house positions as well. So you can check that out. I'll cover that a little bit more in detail the next time. And I see Krista, thank you for answering for Judy. I see y'all helping each other. Awesome. Brenda from Kenya, thank you for joining. I see all these other questions coming through. Someone said, so how can I access the podcast? So you can go to www.confessionsofacra.com and you can access it there, and you can access the podcast episodes there directly, or you can click on the link. If you go to listen now, you can click on the link to whatever is your, the podcast platform that you typically listen to, or you can go directly to your favorite podcast platform like Spotify or Apple and just search for Confessions of a CRA, and we should pop up as well. And then Dramatic. Hi, Jasmyn. This is amazing. Thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate all of y'all. I see Melinda. Oh, thank you so much, Melinda, for including. I see you added the link. Thank you so much. I appreciate y'all all for helping me out. I am a one-woman team. So all of y'all are so amazing. Parvati Kumari, I'm so sorry if I mess up your name. Thank you. Thank you for joining. Joyce, thank you so much from Kenya. Kashel, thank you everybody for joining. And like I said, please send me your questions. I want to add you to the list, and DM me, add it to the comments. If you're listening to this as a recording and you weren't able to join live, that's fine. Add your comments to the list. If you aren't able to join live the next time, that's fine. Still add your questions to the comments, and I will still cover your questions. And you can always listen to the recording and hear the answer to your questions. So thank you guys. Thank you so much for making this a successful first ever live. Believe it or not, I was a little bit nervous. So you guys made it a wonderful experience. I appreciate you all. I appreciate you all for following me. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to share. Don't forget to invite your friends the next time. And like I said, definitely join that my podcast. Follow my podcast. A lot of great guests. And for those of you who are interested in learning how to, work directly with me and, join my coaching program, you can visit aspiringcra.com. You can also send me a direct message on LinkedIn. That's the main platform I'm on, guys, y'all. So if you're on LinkedIn, if you're joining me here from, I apologize, if you're joining me from YouTube or Facebook, head on over to LinkedIn, because if you work with me or if you listen to me, you follow me, you're going to need to create a LinkedIn profile anyway. So head on over to LinkedIn, reach out to me on LinkedIn, or like I said, you can visit aspiringcra.com and you can book a call with me. So until next time, thank you guys for joining me. And I hope you guys have an amazing week.